Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to go to New York and speak with Connecticut-based journalist and blogger Terry Boole, the third most dangerous financialist journalist in the world. You can find all of her work at her website, terryboole.com. Terry Boole, welcome back to the Keiser Report.
Hi, Max. How are you doing? It's good to see you. #1 financial journalist in the world.
Now, Terry Boole, you were the first to break the news that senior executives are being told at J.P. Morgan the loss at their chief investment office in London is closer to $9 billion, not $2 billion. You were the first to break this, so tell us more.
You're right, Max. So, I got this phone call. It was actually last weekend, and there were a few J.P. Morgan managing directors who were being told there are internal models and that the loss could be as much as $9 billion. That doesn't mean they're going to book it all in the second quarter, but that was a really scary number. And they started to call and ask me, what else do you know about J.P. Morgan? What other problems do we have? How do you think this is going to affect our bonuses? I couldn't believe the $9 billion number at first, but then I checked with a few more managing directors, and they kept saying, yeah, we're hearing the same thing. And it's important, I think, to note that we don't know what they're going to book in the second quarter. It is obviously very evident, though, that they are planning for a very worst-case disaster on this trade. And what's more interesting is we have to question, when did this $9 billion estimate come about? Because it was likely before Jamie Dimon stepped forward to Congress and said, we're going to make a profit this quarter, and I think we're going to be fine.
Right. And we understand that Jamie Dimon was going to be testifying under oath, but he couldn't get him to do that. Now we know why. Now, Terry Boole, J.P. Morgan shares have dropped 6% on your report. Jamie Dimon argues that these losses don't matter. What do you say?
Right. I think Jamie Dimon is not being honest with his shareholders and knows that this is a serious problem. What Jamie Dimon has on his side, though, is these lovely little accounting tricks that they get to use, right? So let's say the number's huge. Let's say it really is $9 billion. When it comes time to book the trade, this is not a hedging trade, Max, and that's what I think everyone needs to understand. J.P. Morgan actually disclosed that in their financial statements that they filed with the SEC. This is a for-profit trade. So what that means is at the end of each month, they get to book where the trade is at. They know what the number is right now. They don't have to tell shareholders, though, till the end of the quarter, okay? So, this could be whatever the trade is in that moment that they're going to book. But we don't know what the real loss is until they unwind the trade. They have to sell everything, right? And so on top of that, think about this. If, say, the number's really bad and they go and they have to book $5 billion and the revenue is only $3.5 billion, which is what analysts are estimating right now for the second quarter, J.P. Morgan could go sell the furniture in all their foreclosed homes, right, to make up for that trading loss. And if it's really bad, they could just sell all their foreclosed homes. I mean, it's all a game. And I think the serious question is, why aren't we telling shareholders the truth? Because this is about risk management, not the number that they're going to lose, but the fact that he dropped the ball. His eye was not on the ball, and this is a massive risk they took.
Right. Well, I know from working on Wall Street that one of the tricks you play is you put 10 or 20 positions on, and you don't provide the account numbers. And then you get toward the end of the quarter, and you manufacture an earnings number based on what trades you close and what trades you leave open. And J.P. Morgan does this, as do all banks on Wall Street. But this clearly is a trade that went out of control. And so the question, Terry Boole, is this the beginning of an Enron-type situation where the balance sheet gets completely out of control and eventually the stock goes to zero?
Unfortunately, I don't think J.P. Morgan stock is ever going to go to zero. I do think that there is an enormous amount of room for them to wipe out earnings in the next 3 quarters at least, for 2 reasons, Max. Number 1, we have our trade loss, right, on our prop trade, out of control. Number 2, which I've talked about on this show multiple times, is the $120 billion in mortgage security putback suits that they are going to have to start to pay, and they're going to have to reserve more in their litigation reserves. There was a recent court decision that came down by a federal judge, Judge Crotty, which actually ruled in favor of all the monolines, those are the insurers, that said, guess what? If you can prove that JP Morgan, via Bear Stearns, didn't represent the mortgage-backed securities, okay? You don't even have to prove fraud. If you can say the reps and warranties were a lie, were not right, we're going to give you back all the mortgage bonds that you bought. You get your money back. That's a huge ruling, and we don't even know if that's going to affect institutional investor yet. There's so much on the plate for JP Morgan. There's something else, Max, that I've learned about. There was a hedge fund that they ran. It was a mega billion-dollar hedge fund called Highland Capital. And Highland's being sued by UBS because they did some really allegedly illegal stuff in valuing their assets during the financial crisis so they could get more money from UBS and not blow up. Okay, well, there was a whistleblower that came forward. They sent 36,000 pages to the SEC detailing how JP Morgan's back office helped them cover up this fraud. The SEC is sitting on this information right now. And as of this month, UBS was able to get a Stanford court judge in Stamford, Connecticut, a state judge, to rule that all those files have to be released. There's an attorney right now out of Greenwich, Connecticut. He's kind of a famous attorney named Mark Sherman, who's threatening to not turn them over for the whistleblower because he's worried that JP Morgan's going to do something to the whistleblower, but he's going to have to. The court's going to order it, and so it's one thing on top of another. Additionally, Max, I just read a story today that there was a bribery charge that a company did with JP Morgan. It was a data storage company, and they paid him a few $100,000 for a $12 million contract, but they just settled with the Eastern District of New York, with the DOJ, and said, yeah, we paid JP Morgan bribes for this deal. And they have to pay like $6 million for it. I mean, the fraud inside this bank is out of control, and I think more and more, the facts are coming forward. Okay,
you mentioned the mortgage putbacks, you mentioned the brewing scandals. All of these require some additional liquidity, some money to pay off. At the same time, around the world, because of the Basel III Accord being implemented, banks are being asked to increase their collateral value, to improve their balance sheets. So really, Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan are getting squeezed on both fronts. All of their past crimes are catching up to them with margin calls. At the same time, the international banks are being asked to increase their collateral. How can they survive this pincer movement?
You're right, Max. I think it's something to pay attention to. I think it's a scary number. I think there's some media outlets like CNBC who don't pay attention to the reality of what's really happening here. Instead, yesterday we saw them just working a PR angle for JP Morgan, saying, oh, everything's going to be fine. This second quarter losses are only going to be like $4 to $6 billion. But what they didn't mention is exactly what you just said. As the loss keeps growing and more problems come up, where are they going to get this magical collateral to save? They have to increase their Tier 1 capital, right? That's less money to lend to people, to lend to Main Street.
Right, and that means less...
These are serious issues for them.
Right, and less lending means less fees, less revenue, less profit. And if the subsidies from the U.S. government are shut down, as we know 77% of last quarter's earnings were a direct result of U.S. government subsidies, this company is going to be left for dead. Now, what about in London? You've got Bruno Ixel. Two questions. Is he still with the firm? And the second question is, doesn't London, as the epicenter of global banking fraud, make a mockery of regulations like the Frank Dodd bill in the U.S.?
Okay, Max, I don't know if the trader is still at the firm. I imagine if he's there, I think that he left. Actually, I think there was a news report, although personally I would have kept him at the firm to pay him $1 and make him unwind the damn trade, right? I think as far as Dodd-Frank goes, right now what we've seen, and Francine McKenna, who writes for American Banker, has been on this show, she continually writes to remind people that right now people can just go to London. People can go to London to avoid Dodd-Frank. And they're doing it more and more, which is exactly what we just saw in JP Morgan. So it's really going to have to be global regulators who get together, a rarity, right, and decide, okay, let's police these banks together.
Yes, well, Mervyn King, who runs the Bank of England in the UK, is now making a statement to the effect that we really need to rein in these out-of-control banks, like Barclays Bank in the UK, for example, that's been caught up in the LIBOR bid rigging and interest rate rigging scandal. Do you think that there will be any kind of substantive response from regulators, or is it going to be the same status quo, meaning that regulators, we know, are in the pockets of the banks and there'll be no penalties or any deterrence whatsoever? It's Terry Bull.
Right. Okay, well, you know, Ian Fraser, he's a UK journalist, writes this consistently. He calls the FSA a joke. And so do most European traders that I talk to. So I'm not counting on the FSA doing anything. The British government, maybe they could create a new agency. I don't know. Right now, I think London's a free-for-all. They're desperate for money themselves. They're going to let bankers do whatever the hell they want. As far as the U.S., yeah, I think Dodd-Frank is trying to get a little bit stricter. I think that the U.S. government and the Congress and the Senate is actually trying to do something. But, Max, if you can figure out how to commit fraud, Wall Street's always been able to do it for over 100 years, right?
Okay, so I want to just return in the time we have left, Terry Bull, to just give us a little bit more on the monoline lawsuits. You know, this is another one of your stories that you broke, that you've been on top of from the beginning. Just give us, we have about a minute or so, just a little background and a little update on that, because I think this is going to be really an explosive situation going forward.
Okay, thanks, Max. Right now we have a Syncora lawsuit. Syncora was a monoline who's going to move forward to trial the earliest, but that's not till the beginning of next year. On the plate right now was that decision I just talked about, where a judge said it's going to be much easier to sue JP Morgan because you don't have to prove every single loan that defaulted. You can just prove that Bear Stearns lied, which I believe they did, in their mortgage security contracts, and as a result of that lie, JP Morgan is going to have to pay you back billions and billions and billions of dollars for those lies, okay? So the question will be, who else is going to sue? If they've already listed that there's 120 billion of lawsuits, I mean, there could be more, actually. You could have anyone who ever bought a mortgage-backed securities from Bear Stearns file a lawsuit. And let me tell you this, the lawyers at Patterson Belknap, who have done all the work for the monolines and discovery and private eyes and research and getting over 30 whistleblowers to come over, they are getting phone calls at the yin-yang asking, how can we sue Bear Stearns and JP Morgan also? This is a really real number. I don't know when it's going to hit, but it's going to hit, and it could be quarters of revenue wiped out.
All right, well, Terry Bull, we'll have to have you back on and talk about it. We're out of time. Thanks so much for being on the Keiser Report.
Bye-bye, Max, and congratulations on your engagement.
Yes, thank you so much. And that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and my fiancée, Stacey Herbert. I want to thank my guest, Terry Bull. If you want to send me an email, please do so at keiserreport@rttv.org.